Good morning, although it may be afternoon, as it is 12:15, and it appears to be March 28th, 2025, and as you can see, I'm doing another video for Bluebird Semaphore. By the way, Joe Wenberg, if I didn't say that, Bluebird Semaphore. And I'm doing another book talk. This time, I'm doing a book talk on a book about Richard Wagner. It's called The Sorcerer of Bayreuth. 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 If you're not familiar with that place, I'll tell you. Wagner moved there 11 years before his death. Now he died, I believe, in 1883, so 11 years, 1872, he moved there. But he had been in and out of Bayreuth. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I've never heard it pronounced, so I have no idea. When you do that thing on a magic box, you don't get a sound. You just get a representation of how they think it should be pronounced. So I did the best I could, Bayreuth. And this happens to be a little town, a little city. Essentially, it's in Bavaria. Essentially, it's in the lower part of what is now Germany. And I say it that way because it had been part of East Germany before the unification, somewhere around 1990. After World War II, of course, Germany was split into West Germany and East Germany. So now it's just Germany. And this place, Bayreuth, Wagner used to go there. It seems like he went there quite often. It was a place to go. You wanted to clear your head. You had a little too much stress on your plate. You would go there. It was a nice little town. It had money. It started out as a commercial hub for trading. And those folks got money. When you get money, the next thing you want some artists hanging around. This way you can make yourself believe that your life had some meaning to it more than just acquiring shekels. So the arts were going on there, music, opera, literature, it was going on there. I hadn't come across too many painters in there, but there must have been a significant amount because this book has a number of paintings done of Mr. Wagner and other folks, his girlfriends, and so on, by painters who I assume were living there. Maybe they weren't, maybe they were. And before I go any further, I will tell you, it's a great book. It's a great book. I had a lot of trepidations about reading a book on Wagner because as much as I'm a classical music fan, I never paid any attention to Wagner except occasionally when I would come across a channel that was playing his music, and I would listen momentarily to the shrieking and the yelling, which passed for opera singing at the time, and it still does. I mean, people went nuts for this guy when he was alive. He was the greatest man on the planet. You know, fortunately, Humboldt had already passed away. Otherwise, there would have been competition, because either Humboldt or Wagner would have been the greatest man alive at the time. And Humboldt's main years were more at the top of the century. Now, Wagner, I believe he gets brought into the world around 1814. And Mr. Humboldt, I think he lived on into the 1840s, 1850s. But Wagner was so getting his baptism into the classical music genre and pretty much opera. I mean, that's what he was all about. I think more so than the music, because he wanted to create a big dramatic scene. He had this stuff in his head since he was a kid, and it was mostly about trying to tell these sagas, you know, and the book lets me know that part of his research, he got a hold of things like the Icelandic sagas, and he writes his Lohengrin's and his Tristan Oldie, whatever. I'm not pronouncing them right. And that's one of the reasons why one doesn't jump into Wagner, because the pronunciation is difficult. Now, they say, of course, you go to the opera, you don't need to understand what they're saying. The music is so beautiful. Well, in Wagner's case, I would not use the word beautiful, but I would say that it's like stupendous, that it's over the top, marvelous, great stuff. It's like commandeering. It commands you to listen. Commands you to listen. This is my task now. I have to listen to each one of these CDs. Let me see it. You see it. So this is like about a 5-disc set of Tristan and Isolde. Something like that. And these are legendary figures from the sagas that he went diving into, or diving for. And he was carrying all these operas that he did the book for, that he wrote much of the libretto for. He was carrying them around in his head for years. He was a young man. He started creating these things in his head. This is Wagner now. Which, to me, you know, the fact that I didn't pay any attention to him, that was my fault. I should have. Because he really is one of the great men. One of the greatest. And you have to get over that hurdle with his association with the Nazis, because first of all, he was long dead by then. And unfortunately, his family members got the stigma of being of a type that was that found the nationalist socialists in Germany, the political atmosphere between the two wars, they seemed to think it was the way to go. As we all know, it wasn't. As we all know, that man was a maniac. But they didn't see it. They saw that he represented German aspirations, German high nationalism. And they thought that Hitler and his type were good for the German people, the German state. It would lift them up. It would elevate them. And so they went about it, making Hitler the way to go. And I don't want to say too much more about this because I don't want to make it about that maggot. This is about Wagner. Like I said, he's a great man. Whether you like him or you don't, you can't get around it. He's a great man. He had tremendous intellectual powers. Tremendous. Very few people could have done what he did. And it's unfortunate his family got a bad name because of Hitler latched onto him, probably because he smelt that it would be advantageous to him and what he was trying to do. What he was trying to do was commandeer the entire German state and people and have them follow in his footsteps. He would make them all drones singing the Nazi praise. That's what Hitler wanted to do. So, be that as it may, the family, even during the war and after the war, for quite some time, they were stigmatized with that association with the maggot. Now, many other influential so-called royal families around the world were at fault here too. One of the people, a wife of one of the Wagners, I believe, was a wife, was a woman. She was British, and she had a lot of influence. And she was in love with the idea of Hitler and Nazis and the Germans. And she influenced a lot of worldwide recognition for the maggot. And so, she's as at fault as anybody else for the disaster that happened between the wars and during World War II. Because if Hitler didn't get support, he wasn't going anywhere. And he got the support, and a lot of it from the British aristocracy, who, to them, Prussian, they were of a high caliber of sacredness. And it just goes to show you how limited and small-minded these aristocrats were, and will always be. Because all they're thinking about is how wonderful they and their kind are. And what's the next best way to put our foot down on the peasants and the lower classes? That's all they're thinking about. And Hitler seemed like a good next step to beat down the peeps. So the aristocrats got on it big. From what I understand, even Churchill was sniffing around, trying to see what he could get from Hitler and the Nazis, And so I find that to be one of the biggest flaws in the character of the aristocrats, that they couldn't see a rat as big as Hitler. They couldn't see it for what it was. So that's a big flaw. You'll never get me on that bandwagon. Although I do like Churchill, don't get me wrong. I got a big painting of him. I think I showed it to everybody. But he was not without his faults. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. By the way, I recently acquired a bottle of scotch. I can't think of the name right now. It's on I don't know. It's a funny name, but they say it was his go-to scotch. As we all know, the man got up in the morning, was handed a glass of whiskey and water, and he stayed with it for the rest of the day. And often it was that scotch, his go-to scotch that he got. But I came across it. I had it in my house for a while, and then there was a a cause for a little nip or two, and that is now long gone. But so getting back to the book, like I said, this is a most encouraging book to read because, like I said, I actually let it sit around for 2 years before I touched it, and he doesn't bother with the minor details. Oh, he was born here, and his mother was there, and his daddy was there. I mean, he mentions it, but like only in passing. You know, he doesn't bog himself down with this stuff. He gets into the nitty-gritty of who this man was. And you come away from this book as if you really know this guy. You know him. And you understand his greatness. And that means that for a moment or two while you're reading this book, you actually penetrate into that greatness, which, you know, most of us cannot get close to that. I know I can't. But briefly, for a moment, when you come across something like this, you will at least get an idea of what it was like to be him. You know, the same thing when you read Humboldt. You get an idea of what it was like to be him. Now, that being said, if you read Darwin, you don't get any idea that he was a great man or he wasn't a great man. You just get the facts. Just the facts, nothing but the facts. You know, I think a better read is to get the facts, okay, but also get the man. You know, that's the way to go. So he lives an adventurous life. He has to flee the country. They're going to kill him. The political outlaw. This is Richard Wagner. He's a political outlaw. He had to flee the country. You know? I never knew these things about him. And I was, as they say, bowled over by this guy. And he didn't do very good with the ladies either. They were always outdistancing him. And he was always, he always was able to get himself in hot water with the women. He was always able to have 2 or 3 going at the same time, and it would cause him so much grief. You wonder if any of it was worth it, you know. But he was not good with the women, not good at all. He got in too much hot water. But they loved him. They all loved him. As a matter of fact, his last wife stuck around long enough after his demise to become a principal person involved with the productions and staging of his works. It was a lot of effort to do that stuff, a lot of effort. And she was so enthralled by Mr. Richard Wagner that she took it on her shoulders to make Mr. Wagner more well-known, more appreciated in the world. Now, like I said, I've given myself the task to listen to each one of these CDs. There's 5 of them with music on them. And I listened to the first one. The prelude was pretty nice, I must say. Pretty nice. Very, almost like one line. The notes were almost like one line. Low, build up, a little louder, go on, and then down again, and then disappear. It's about 5 minutes long. And that was fine, but then it went into the singing part. And a lot of operas, they just don't get it. It's horrible. I mean, they're not singing, they're like either talking fast or they're screaming or something like that. So they got into the music part of this. This is the first disc, and I listened to the whole thing. And I didn't find anything to appreciate or to like in that. But my self-given task is to listen to all of these and then be able to say, well, oh, I did find this redeeming aspect of this Wagner piece. It's well worth a listen. Like I said, the prelude, how do you say that? It's pretty nice. I liked it. And then we'll go from there. I think I'm going to find a few spots in this. What did I say? This is Tristan and Elodie or something like that. I'll find a few spots that I think are praiseworthy. I better. And then don't forget, I mean, there's a ton of other Wagner stuff that I'm going to have to listen to, because after demeaning this guy for so long, I owe it to him to go in and truly listen and then say something meaningful, or say nothing at all, but don't just say, oh, Wagner, get him out of here. I don't want to listen. You know, you think of the images that Western culture got from him. The Flying Dutchman, the Cycle of the Rings, Valhalla. I mean, this man put Western culture on the map. You know, he's quite a guy. And he thought of himself in the most egotistical terms. They don't come any more egotistical than Mr. Wagner. Really. I mean, I'm going to make this up, but I'm sure in his head he was saying, well, if I didn't do all this stuff, who was God going to put here to do it? You know, God put me here to do it, so there you go. Yeah, it was very egotistical, and everybody knew it, and you know, most of the people around him liked that aspect of him. They liked that he was such a big head. They liked it. So, you know, I was going to say this day and age, you know, they would say, oh, he's terrible, he's an egotist, he's a megalomaniac, blah, 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 blah. The point is, those were important traits to have back then. I don't know if there's any traits important to have anymore. You know, just go out and take and do whatever you want. That's the MO today. What else? Oh, the book is just beautiful, too. It's got over 250 illustrations, and at least 2/3 of them are in color. I mean, I'm telling you, and this isn't just color. This is color. You really think you're reading an art book when you see these illustrations. Let me see if I can get a nice one. Yeah, it's like an art book, just decked out with history and both what's going on with Wagner these days and what was going on back then. I don't know who this dude is. Let's see, who is this dude? Hans von Bülow, at the age of 25, painted by somebody. This guy had something to do with Wagner's life. Hans von Bülow. He had something to do with Wagner's life. I can't remember exactly what, but it was one of them in there. Yeah. So, the guy who wrote the book, he did an awful lot of stuff. He's a big-time intellectual in the world of Wagner, big time. You know, they have this festival at Bayreuth, that place. They have it every year, and it's big time. People come, they put on some of the operas, they turn the whole city into almost into a stage to perform the operas. They do it outside, do it inside. And I think that if you ever want to attend that, you have to get tickets way in advance. Way in advance, because there's a lot of people want to do that. And by the way, where this place is, it would have been in East Germany, when it was in East Germany. So if you're looking at the overall blob on the map that is now Germany, you would have had to go back halfway down the blob and then maybe a little to the east. And you come to the border of what was then East Germany and probably Czechoslovakia. But now they call it Czechia or something like that. And very close to that border is where this place is. Bayreuth. Small population, 75,000. And supposedly the best way to fly in is you get about 250 miles near the town, and you got to go land transportation for the rest of the way. Not that there aren't closer airports, but they won't have flights from where you're coming from. So you're probably coming from New York. So, basically what you're going to find out that his life is the life of a human being who more or less got caught up in his own enthusiasm for his own self-chosen lifestyle, self-chosen life's work. He got caught up in it, and he didn't let anything get in his way. Revolutions, wars, this, that, and the other thing. He just kept on going. Women trouble, he just kept on going. I really think that he probably is a true real-world genius. He had that aspect. Like I said, I believe that from a very early age, he was running around with all these operas in his head, making notes about them, scribbling stuff on paper when he could, knowing that someday, when he got the chance, he'd turn them into real operas. And he did. And I think that's an act of genius. Where there was nothing, now there's something. And it's not just you know, trash like we get today. We got a lot of, out of nothing, we get trash. We got true works of genius from Mr. Wagner, you know, and I see a great resemblance between his life and the life of Beethoven. And I'm sure other people have said the same thing 1,000 times. By the way, another great musician, composer that was very close with Mr. Wagner was Franz Liszt. Liszt, if you know anything about classical music, you know that he was one of the, or is, or was, one of the great pianists of all time. And there's a picture in this book of Liszt looking over the shoulder of Wagner, who's sitting in front of a piano with tons of music up on the piano. And Wagner's playing it, he's reading it, playing it, and Liszt is looking over his shoulders. I think their first meeting didn't result in a friendship. I think their first meeting, there was some antagonistic aspects to it. But, you know, I mean, you put two geniuses together, and they're not going to necessarily get along at first strike. But they did get along. Yeah. And I want to say that I think Mr. Wagner married Mr. Liszt's daughter. And I want to say, I think her name was Cosima, but I could be wrong. Because, you know, I still adhere to the principle of no notes. It's not in your head. We're going to say, you're going to go find that piece of paper. You scribble something down on when you're talking to people and you want to relate. What I find, and I didn't always feel this way, but I find that if you bring up something and it's enough interest to the person you're talking to, but you haven't given them the whole enchilada, if they're interested, they'll go find out the rest of it on their own. You know, you should never have to spoon feed people information. They should be man enough, and sometimes woman enough, to go find it on their own. You know, I mean, it's all there in a magic box. You get a fragment of everything there is to know on the magic box. And as I caution people way in the beginning of these talks, but that's all you get is a fragment. So don't think because when you were reading about Washington's bath, that would be George Washington's hot water spring bath in West Virginia, and that would be eastern West Virginia. I forget the name of the place, but it's famous. It's like a spa. People go there for their summer vacation now. Don't think because you know that place exists that you know everything that you need to know about it. You know, there's too much information, folks. The universe has too much information. And I know there's a lot out there, a lot of people out there who have drunk the Kool-Aid and are drinking the Kool-Aid, and they're saying that in the future, if not already, we will know everything. Everything. We will be an all-knowing apparition, organism, when we will know everything. Let me tell you. You're gonna need something else besides the human brain to be able to hold, store, recall, recite, remember, etc., all the information in the world. It's not going to fit in a human brain. You're going to need something other than a human brain. And it's going to have to be bigger than Wagner or Liszt or Beethoven or Mozart or anybody else's brain. It's going to have to be a lot bigger. They don't know what they're talking about, these people who tell you about what it's going to be like in the future. They have no idea, period. Highly recommend this book, The Sorcerer of Bayreuth, by, I didn't even mention this guy's name yet, by Barry Millington. Great credits. This guy's done his homework, and he's been the leading man in a lot of cultural heavy hitting. Leading man. Sometimes you say to yourself, what did I do with my life? Look what these other people did. Gosh, it's extraordinary. Extraordinary. So, I think this book came out somewhere like 2012. I don't know if you still get it in a bookstore. You probably could order it. But there's a great, on the back leaves, it has an outline of the Wagners, where they came from, where they're going, etc. Like a little outline of their family history. And it's right on the back of the book, which is it's a good thought that he added that. You get to a point where a lot of the kids and other relatives, they all have like the same first name, and you don't know where you are. You're not in the Bronx, but it's with that you can at least get an idea, a better idea. What else about this book? It's just a good book. I like the way it was structured. His chapters are not that long, so you get through them and you're on to another subject quite rapidly. Anyway, somebody's out there. I hear noise. So I hope you enjoyed the briefest of attempts to give you a little background on the Sorcerer of Bayreuth. I mean, I actually once had a very old copy of the Icelandic sagas, and I've had others, from the Danes, and it's a piece of history that I've always been fascinated with, but I never got down to the nitty gritty, which if I had known more about Wagner at the time, I'm sure I would have. I'm also sure I wouldn't have let those volumes of the Icelandic sagas fall out of my hands. And I did that with a lot of things. And now I regret it. Because although if I read it somewhere, unbeknownst to me, it's stored in my memory somewhere, but I'm not going to be recalling that stuff anytime soon. So I'd say this as a wrap up on this book. I recommend it. And number two, if you're already a fan of classical music, but you've been encouraged to thumb your nose at Wagner, I would say try to put that to rest and pressure yourself to listen to him. Because the long and the short of it is, that in the world of classical music, he is one of the true geniuses. And there's a lot of successful composers of classical music, but they're not geniuses. They write nice stuff, it sounds pretty, it can help you sleep, so on and so forth. But it's not genius stuff. You know, Beethoven's stuff was genius. And Wagner, his stuff was genius. There's just no way around it. It was genius. It still is. And the productions are just so gigantic and enormous that if you get a chance to see any of them, whether you want to see them or you don't want to, I would say make an effort to see them. This will alter your brain, and probably for the better. And I know, like in my case, that would be a good thing. Maybe not in everybody's case, but certainly in mine. But listen, it's a dreary day out. I guess I got to get pushing on here. So you guys continue listening to my book talks for no other reason than, you may never have even known this book existed. You may never have known that the book with the simple title Rome, which I last talked about and recommended, existed. And certainly any of the books that I talk about, they're probably not going to be common books. So you'll learn another book with a title that you may not be familiar with. And you can look into that. I mean, anybody could do a book talk on I don't know, what's a recent volume, who knows. I was going to say James Fenimore Cooper's Leather Stocking Tales. But then again, I held back and I say, no, not everybody can do that. So I won't say that. Although it's been a title that has crept into my mind for me to try to get my hands on and read it. It's just a great title, Leather Stocking Tales. And by the way, this is way off topic, but it's a little bit in because I brought up Leather Stocking Tales. For the longest time, I've always wanted to get up into Duluth, Minnesota, Duluth, which is a port on Lake Superior, way up there. I always wanted to get out there. I was fascinated by the idea of this northern city. And recently, via a lot of, what do they call, videos, whatever, I've been seeing a lot of Duluth. Great big tankers, cargo vessels, and the calamities that have crossed their ways. The Great Lakes can be treacherous waters, treacherous. And if you listen to these documentaries, I think a number was thrown out to like 6,000 vessels at the bottom of the lakes. And what I didn't know, and you may not have known this, but Duluth is the furthest out port. Furthest out. In would be on the Atlantic coming into the St. Lawrence Seaway. And then you come in and you hit Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, Huron, Michigan, Superior. Okay, and that's like 2,000 miles. However, it makes Duluth a true ocean accessible port, which the merchants of the US of A are in love with, because it gives them easier access to the entire world. At least access in the eastern direction, where they go east to get onto the Atlantic, and then they do whatever they want. They can go to Europe, they can go to South America, they can go to Arabia, and it's all possible because Duluth, very interior Minnesota, has access to the Atlantic Ocean. Now, it wasn't access that was always there. I mean, maybe Indians in their canoes always had a built-in access, little portage here and there. But we had to build tremendous locks and canals to make it happen. So that's a little aside on all of this. When you think of it, though, that in general, what I've always tried to do is keep to my overall guide of world history for ordinary people, and certainly the ocean port of Duluth on Lake Superior fills that void, or fills that gap of being part of world history. It's just tremendous stuff, you know. I enjoy knowing and learning about all these things. And I don't tell too many people because they don't care. People don't care. They could care less if 1,040 foot, 1,000-foot super tanker creeps into a canal up in Minnesota with only a half a foot of freeboard space between itself and the lock's sidewall, making like such a tremendous engineering feat to steer that thing, which is over 1,000 feet, straight as an arrow. So you come out the other side, people really don't care. They don't care. What they want is their next, whatever, their next gizmo. I'm not going to talk about that. Listen, enjoy the day. I already spent too much time. And just hoping your next talk will be a pleasant talk. You can mention me to them and where they can find me. Bluebird Semaphore off the YouTube channel. Very nice. And don't forget, I got like over 50 of these. Some of them predate the book talks. And some of them actually have real historical facts. So go figure. All right, I got to go. Where's the shut this down button? Here it is. Okay, bye, everybody.